Hi, my name is Marko Bajzer. I was the artist in residence at Great Basin National Park and am the composer of The Sacrifice of Prometheus, which you're about to hear. I grew up in Minnesota, and my parents are actually immigrants from Croatia, so we didn't do a whole lot of the big American road trip to the national parks when I was growing up because we spent a lot of time going back to Croatia, seeing family, and then it wasn't really until 2017 when I had to do this solo road trip from Omaha, Nebraska to Washington, D.C. to San Francisco, where I stopped at a bunch of national parks and was really blown away by the sense of space and the beauty of the nature and the freedom of being on the road. Classical music was a big part of that. Listening to specific pieces about specific geographic terrains in those geographic terrains. For example, the Fourth Movement of the Pines of Rome, which you'll also hear on this concert, while watching a beautiful sunrise. Strauss's Alpine Symphony while backpacking through the mountains. Those quickly became some of the most emotional, fulfilling, meaningful, cathartic experiences of my life. When I learned that some national parks have artist in residence programs, I thought, well, I have a master's in music composition. So I hatched this idea of writing this sort of large symphonic suite where each movement or each little piece is about a different national park. It's sort of modeled after Holst's The Planets, where each piece can kind of be its own little tone poem, or you can put two or three of them together, or you can do the whole thing. That gives some flexibility to the orchestra. So it's a celebration of nature in America and also the American ideals that brought the national parks into existence in the first place. The parks that I was interested in for this project are ones that have an interesting soundscape. So for Lassen Volcanic, that was bubbling mud pots and hissing fumaroles. Sounds in nature that you don't really hear, when you're kind of going out on a walk in the neighborhood. I learned about this method of hooking up electrodes to plants and getting music from them, and thought how cool that would be to do that with the ancient bristlecone pines in Great Basin National Park. The ancient bristlecone pines, which are one of the two state trees of Nevada, are the oldest trees in the world. And there is one specific tree called Prometheus, which was estimated to be at least 4,800 years old, probably 5,000 years old, which the longer you think about it, the crazier it is. In year zero, it was already 3,000 years old. It is older than the concept of an alphabet. Prometheus was cut down inadvertently by some researchers who only realized that it was the oldest known living tree after they cut it down. And that incident is really what accelerated efforts to create Great Basin National Park, which was established in 1986. I lived in Great Basin National Park for about a month on Wheeler Peak at about 10,000 feet, and basically hiked just about every day that it wasn't raining on me. So I backpacked basically the length of the park, mostly off trail. I summited, I think, the 10 tallest peaks in the park, and then I came home and then wrote the piece over the next year and a half. The narrative of the piece is that there's a camper who's kind of awoken in the middle of the night, is sort of groggy, and then peeks out of their tent to see this just amazing night sky. Meteors and the Milky Way and all these constellations that they've never seen before. They're sort of in awe of the firmaments, and they are sort of beckoned by this kind of voice in the wind into the forest and eventually into the grove of bristlecone pines. They're right at tree line at about 10, 11,000 feet, and they're very rocky, and the bristlecone pines are super well adapted to this very specific, very inhospitable environment. So nothing else really grows there. Eventually our protagonist arrives to the stump of Prometheus, whereupon the sort of ghost of Prometheus says, "What have you done to me?" Even the existence of the state of Nevada is just a blip in this tree's lifetime, and we managed to chop it down in that time. So it's kind of a reflection of conservation and our role as the caretakers of the planet. On the one hand, studying Prometheus gave us a lot of knowledge about our Earth and about our climate, and that's why Prometheus is called Prometheus, named after the mythological Titan who gave humans fire and sort of metaphorically knowledge, and also helped establish the creation of the national park. On the other hand, do we have to destroy an environment in order to save it? And is fixing a problem that we ourselves created really worth celebrating? and it brings up a lot of these questions of how do we go forward in taking care of our planet. And originally my initial title for the piece was called The Gift of Prometheus in All That It Gave Us, but eventually I realized, this was not a gift, it was a sacrifice. In this piece you'll hear kind of synths that are the sort of raw recordings from the trees. And additionally, it's sort of one of the main two sources of the motives of the piece. So the themes are derived from these recordings, and then the other kind of source of inspiration for the themes is actually setting of the words, "What have you done to me?" which is kind of like a, "What have you done to me?" Which there obviously aren't singers, but it's kind of set to those words. And that's the kind of musical DNA of this piece. In this way, we're giving voice in a kind of more literal sense to these ancient trees. One of the things that's really cool about this piece is the solo bass oboe, which is not a very common instrument. So when I was thinking about what instrument to represent the ghost of this 5,000-year-old tree, I was thinking like, what instrument has the most sort of bizarre, inscrutable, esoteric timbre, and then thought, oh, it's got to be the bass oboe. Our bass oboe soloist for this is Russ DeLuna, who is incredible, and you all are in for a treat. I'm super excited about this premiere. It's probably the coolest thing I've done with my life so far, and I'm really happy to be doing it here in Reno, Nevada with the Reno Philharmonic and with you all.